Welcome. Welcome. I am Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy Sunday. Glad to see you back again. Here we are on another Sunday, doing all the cool things, having technical issues. It's live. We're going live. We're doing it. Hopefully, all the guests get in. We can have a great conversation. It is Sunday morning. Hopefully, you're here instead of watching Donald Trump jabber on Meet the Press. We're glad to see you. Man, there's a whole bunch of people in the show. We really appreciate you. So it has been to say it's been a crazy week would be an understatement of all. You guys know it as well as I do between the international things that have happened, between things that have happened here in our cabinet picks. So let's just dive into the news. We'll go right to the news, starting with in Syria. So overnight, if you haven't been paying attention to how you missed it, it looks like the Syrian regime has fallen. Bashar al-Assad has actually left the country. There's even rumors his plane may have crashed. It took off from the capital, Damascus, flew a weird route up and down in altitude and speed, and came off the radar near Homs. It is missing right now. No one's saying where he is. In the meantime, the Russians and the Iranians are actually negotiating to get their people out of there because the entire thing happened. So if you haven't been paying attention, rebels led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which we'll call HTS, have seized the capital after a lightning offensive that began in November. They had been planning this for years. So that organization, HTS, if you're not familiar, was actually part of Al Qaeda at one point. The leader on the screen here was fought in Iraq. He's a Saudi Arabian originally, moved to Syria. But over the last 4 to 5 years, the HTS has tried to govern their area and put in place like professionalism. They've promised to be, shall we say, not attack other religions. They're Sunni Muslim, of course. Iranians are Shia. They have tried to govern reasonably. In that time, he has been making negotiations with other groups. So this has been building for a while. This wasn't actually a surprise attack in the sense that he hasn't been working towards this. And so it was a flood. They came out of Idlib and they attacked. Last night, they entered Damascus without a fight. The prime minister went on the TV and said that he is willing to work with them. There's video now this morning of him just going to meet the rebels. A lot of people have been asking me online, what should we expect from all this? Well, 13 years of war is ending. So that in itself is a good thing, right? Let's be honest. I mean, this has been one of the most bloody conflicts since World War II. Just so to see an end to that fighting is significant in a million ways. You can see here the video. I mean, classic video. That's his father, al-Assad statue coming down, the original dictator. You've seen these before. It's a good thing. So what's next? Well, they have been negotiating with the Russians to get the Russians out of there. They've been negotiating with the Iranians to get them out of there, is our understanding. We don't know what to expect, but in any sense, a lot of the world is holding their breath. It is a defeat for people we don't like working with. Russia has obviously spread thin now with Ukraine, clearly. Iran, of course, has been supporting Hezbollah and other fights against Israel. They were spread thin. So in the end, they couldn't stop this rush and were defeated. So this is a defeat for our enemies. What it means in the global order is yet to be seen. What it means for Ukraine, for example, Putin standing in his country, all that is questions that will be answered in the coming weeks, I'm sure. But in the meantime, I think it's okay to take a moment to breathe and celebrate the end of a bloody, bloody conflict. At least, I think, 600,000 to 1 million people have died. 6.5 million people have been displaced internally and externally from Syria into Lebanon. The end of that fighting is worthy of celebration in itself. So that's big news. We'll have to see what that means. And it has repercussions here, obviously. So we'll talk about that in a second, as a matter of fact. Our next story that happened this week is South Korea's president declared martial law. If you haven't been following that, it's shocking developments. Tuesday night, he declared martial law. Their constitution actually allows martial law in the constitution, but it's a process for it. So if you weren't following the news, he declared martial law that night. The military defense minister and the head of the military, the chief of staff of the army, did support, and was the chief of staff of the army was named the martial law commander. They immediately surrounded the National Assembly. But under South Korean law, the National Assembly, the parliament, votes on a martial law decree and can vote it down. Interestingly enough, we found out later the head of South Korean Special Forces was his troops were tasked with surrounding the National Assembly. We found out, I think Thursday, that he was actually ordered by the defense minister to remove any legislators and their staff from the National Assembly and prevent a vote. He did not. He refused that, knowing that it was an illegal order. He refused to follow that illegal order and arrest the parliament. He sadly had his troops stand there. He also didn't issue live ammunition to his troops because he was concerned about, quote, incidents he saw occurring and didn't want civilians to get killed. Because of that, the parliament was able to convene 190 legislators from both parties, which was a quorum, and they voted unanimously against the martial law decree. About an hour went by in the middle of the night as the president decided what to do. In the end, he decided to accept that vote and stand down, and the military stood down. Since then, it's gotten real crazy. If you can see some of these, that's our next story. You can see some of these things that have developed since then. You're seeing protests in the streets, 150,000 people yesterday. The parliament did convene and vote to impeach the president, who apologized for his martial law mistake. Sadly, his own party in that case didn't even show up, so a quorum couldn't be reached to vote on the impeachment. They're saying that he should resign. They're pushing him to resign. The opposition party is saying, no, that's not in our constitution. You can't just simply resign. The reason, of course, is the opposition the party wants to keep power. In the end, Koreans aren't very happy about it, and they're protesting and they're fighting back. And this is going to be a very important story to watch. Of course, it has the implications for us here. Many of us watched those events unfold and wondered, could it happen here? I did a show. We talked about it on Democracy, our regular show this week. Could that happen here? We do not have the same laws. Obviously, we don't have a national emergency act, but we don't have like a martial law. Okay, so in that sense, it isn't the same way. However, if you watch the main show, I did a show this week with Soren Dayton from the Niskanen Center, where we talked about what are the laws like here. And there's two big ones, of course. National Emergencies Act is one, and then the other one, of course, is the Insurrection Act. Those can be used very widely. The National Emergency Act alone, there's over 150 laws that have emergency provisions in them that can be used under a national emergency. Obviously, President Trump used it the first time when he was trying to stop, the migration, immigration thing. He used the National Emergency Act, that case, to move funds from the DOD to HLS to build wall. Under President Biden, he used the Pandemic National Emergency Act to get rid of student loans, which ended up being voted against by the Supreme Court. If you understand why they voted against it, it's because he used the National Emergency Act, and it wasn't quite perfect. And so that was voted against. So each party uses our National Emergency Act for their own benefit, if you will, but it remains to be seen how it will be used. We do know that the Trump administration has talked about using these laws, in manipulative ways. So we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us with that, and we're going to have to deal with it when the time comes. So the National Emergency Act, Insurrection Act, all these things have fallout here. In the meantime, we'll watch South Korea and see what happens in South Korea. So finally, our third story. Well, you can't avoid it. You can't ignore it. The craziness of the Trump cabinet picks. We'll talk about with our panel, my guest. Pete Hegseth has faced a steady drip of new revelations about his past behavior and beliefs. He has already faced scrutiny over accusations of a sexual assault at a Republican women's conference in 2017. This week, New Yorker's Jane Mayer had an extensive story detailing his secret deals and hidden mishaps. A whistleblower report and other documents suggest that he was forced out of both organizations he ran, Vets for Freedom and then Concerned Vets America, over financial mismanagement and inappropriate behavior and drinking on the job. I mean, the stories are kind of shocking when you read them. I mean, talking about how he tried to climb on stage at a strip club. He took his entire staff to a strip club, to include the women. He had to be pulled off the stage because he was trying to dance. Another story that came out in that report, which was shocking, he was, I mean, it's kind of shocking. He actually was at a hotel bar, drunk, and at the end of the night, he and another staff member started shouting out, "Kill all Muslims, kill all Muslims," in a hotel bar. So needless to say, he was brought down, he was brought out of that by the Concerned Veterans America, and he is now out of those jobs. So obviously, there's a lot of questions about his ability to be the Secretary of Defense. This story you see up on the screen now talks about his Christian nationalism, written by a guy named Jasper Craven, is Politico. I've known Jasper for many years. He's a dogged reporter in the veteran space. And this talks about the fact that Hegseth has been very clear in his Christian nationalist leanings and that what his church believes in. He actually moved his family from New Jersey to Tennessee, ostensibly to join a church that's led by a guy named Doug Wilson, who is one of the big Christian nationalist, has some incredibly scary views about even slavery, for God's sake, and the place of women in our society. So there's some really concerning things. So every day it's sort of a new drip on our friend Pete Hegseth. Kash Patel, of course, was nominated to be FBI. A lot of history coming out about him. We talked about it a little bit last week. Patel is a very scary choice for FBI. He has, he's clearly said he's going to come after journalists. We showed the video last week of him talking to Steve Bannon about going after journalists. That Bannon himself was saying, we're going to come after MSNBC producers who've done illegal things. The good news, those folks, is he's actually changed. He's actually clarified his views. They're only going to go after journalists that did illegal things. So it's all good. Okay, so needless to say, not a very good choice. That's on top of his belief in QAnon, his constant sale of merch, his weirdness online with pictures of him in leather, which were photoshopped together. He's just a mess. And of course, Tulsi Gabbard is the next. We think it's probably likely that Tulsi Gabbard is going to be the next one in the barrel as far as focus. With the fall of Syria, back to that story, she, of course, had 2 secret meetings with Bashar al-Assad while she was in Congress visiting. She has expressed a lot of support for Assad. She's expressed support for Putin in a lot of ways. Her views make a lot of people nervous to make her the director of national intelligence, which is a huge job with access to our national intelligence. JJ, do you have that video of John Bolton talking about her nomination from the other day?
Yeah, I think she's totally unqualified to be a DNI, and I think her positions put her beyond the outermost fringe of American politics. When she visited Assad in Syria, he was effectively a Russian-Iranian ally. And what she said about Syria not being a direct threat to the United States, that was her justification for going, it's completely false. The Syrians and their combination with Iran and Hezbollah have posed direct threats to Americans across the region. They certainly pose a direct threat to key American allies, Israel and Jordan. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the files that may be uncovered in the Syrian government, if the rebels succeed in capturing Damascus, what they show about a number of Americans.
Yeah, I mean, and that happened since then. Since Bolton had an interview, Damascus has fallen. So it'll be very interesting. And if you know history, a lot of times, like when Baghdad fell, we found a lot of paperwork. I mean, the one thing about authoritarian regimes, they love paperwork. We found that in Baghdad. I used to go into, when we took over the Saddam Air Force Base up in the north. We found a lot of well-kept papers, and it's a lot of intelligence. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this new government. Many on the Hill are saying her nomination is dead in the water. 2 current and 3 former GOP Senate aides familiar with discussions had told several media and Politico that there's just no way. So we'll see. Republican staffers are citing her views on Russia and Syria, and frankly, her lack of experience. She's never actually worked in intelligence. She's an Army officer, but she isn't an intelligence officer. So, and then of course that's before we talk about her foreign travel. So we'll see what happens with her nomination. It's the next one, and we haven't even talked about RFK Jr. or Linda McMahon, or actually we'll talk about Linda McMahon, I think, with our panel. So if that's the news of the week as we see it, it'll kind of frame our discussion for the show. We are thrilled to have you here with us, and great part of our second show. As you know, it's live, so we'll figure stuff out as we go. If not, it'd be great. We're so glad that so many of you are joining us, and welcome to On Democracy Sunday. Let's just have our panel. Come on, JJ. Oh man, okay, welcome. Our panel this week, as you can see, are the coolest people I know. Sari Beth Rosenberg is known for many things. She's a writer, she's an influencer, she's a teacher, she's a co-founder of Teachers Unify. Next, yeah. Heather Thomas, Heather is so glad to see you. It's the first time I think we've talked on person. Heather, of course, person that's seen the 80s starring in a slew of shows and movies, including Fall Guy, Lee Majors, retired from acting. And the reason we want to talk is because she's become very, very busy in building community and doing things. Of course, if you follow Heather online, you know about chickens and flowers. And so, ladies, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you having me.
Don't get purged.
What's that?
Don't get purged.
I hope we don't get purged. Being purged would be bad.
No, I made a website. I've got a website, don'tgetpurged.org.
Oh, God. Well, there you go. Well, don't get purged. Welcome, ladies. It's great to see you. Crazy week, right?
Yeah.
Say the least. Say the least. I mean, we try to be positive and just not get wrapped up in things. It's people are so tired. You notice I didn't do any Trump clips. I'm pretty proud of that. And 2 weeks in a row, JJ, with no Trump clips, right?
That's good for me.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
People are
Thank
just
you.
messing. Anyway, of course, things are crazy in New York, Sari, as you know. I will get to that later. With the shooting of the pig and Heather, how
We had
flowers?
a tsunami warning for a while.
Yeah, you had an
Oh
earthquake
yeah.
in California. So we got both coasts represented. So, well, I'm glad you both are safe in the craziness. But how are things, Sari? How are you doing since the election? We'll start with you.
I mean, every day, every hour different. I keep telling myself, oh, I'm not going to post today. I'm just going to take a day off from the news.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't, as you can tell. Anyone who follows me knows that even it was like, oh, it's Saturday night. I'm just going to chill. And then we started talking about Linda McMahon. And then I just went crazy and did a complete thread on her. So, that's how I'm at. The same.
I can see it. Heather, how are you doing?
I've decompressed from that
Yeah.
horrible stunned feeling, and every time I say I'm not going to watch the news, of course I go hit it about midnight or something. It's like every awful little who down in Whoville, he's found them all.
Ooh.
It really is. It's just crazy, and I mean, it's easy to get. And I do news for a living, if you will, and I follow this stuff. But even I've kind of had to take a step back a couple times. Even me. I mean, poor my fiance Heather. Also, Heather is always like, "Hey, we should go shopping." She let me go to Target with her. What does that tell you? Right? I mean, that's big.
Yeah, that says a lot.
I've been doing it online.
I mean, the fact she's like, you need to go to Target. I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
That means that's a call for help or an assist.
I admit it. Sometimes I do lay on the couch, kind of shaking, and no, I don't. So anyway, we're here, we're alive. It's still good. So let's bring up the panel picks, ladies. Like Frank, you know this already. And for those who are new to the show, we bring our panel on and we do the panel picks. We pick a couple of subjects. And you get to pick. A couple of you may recognize, may not. So, JJ, let's bring up the panel picks. All right. Some of you may recognize these. Heather, she's jumped in, right? All right, Heather,
chicken hats.
People are wondering what the hell I'm talking about chicken hats. Explain chicken hats, Heather.
Oh, chicken hats. They're hats you put on top of chickens' heads. And I have some cooperative chickens. I've got about 45 hats. I've even got, what do I have here? I have little birthday hats.
Oh, cute. Oh my God.
My goodness.
It's a sparkly one. And we've got them in all flavors. We'll have a little birthday party. I have a sombrero. I have one of those frog eye hats. I have a Valkyrie hat. I have church lady hats. I have a rabbit ears one.
That's awesome.
Now, I've had chickens, and I don't know how your chickens are so cooperative that they do these things for you. How many chickens do you have?
The chickens, I've never had a vicious chicken. I have one. One. Spike. But she's vicious. But even the rooster cooperates.
My God, wow. I don't know, Yeah, you live on the country. I mean, if anybody follows you, but it hasn't stopped your work. I mean, let's circle back. You talk about purge, don't get purged. Tell us about don't get purged, since we kind of skipped over it. In between chickens, you're also trying to keep people from getting purged off the voter rolls, aren't you?
Yeah, I made it for Stacey Abrams when she ran the first time in 2018. And it came out of LA Cafe. We were saying there needs to be a website where you can check and see if you're purged or not, because the general thinking was don't mention purging. It scares the voters. So that's why it's never on the front page of any of the registrations or voting rights sites.
Yeah.
And I made Don't Get Purged mostly for the name, but I had billboards and Kemp kept chasing me during that thing. And he threatened this lady who's unflappable, who owns all the has a billboard franchise, and she goes, "I work for Obama. Go fuck yourself." And and he kept chasing me in Georgia. But anyway, we put them on. We got a lot of people on purge. I millions of people this election came by the site. But it's on the front page, and it just tells you if the voter registration is open, simply re-register. That's all you have to do. It demystifies it. They used to think it would scare voters, and that's why it's on the back pages of everything. But they're purge happy. It's like signature matching and all the little ways they just kill votes.
I mean, we saw reports of millions, and obviously a lot of folks are reasonably asking questions about the election, reasonably asking questions, the results. A lot of people are shocked by the results. There's a pretty robust conversation about whether it was stolen or not. I mean, and that's a reasonable, I think, conversation.
The bullet votes, the bullet votes that everybody was talking about.
Yeah, it's scary. So, I think now is the time to check. Do it now in the off year. Check your and by the way, elections aren't over, right? I mean, there's elections coming. So bring up the picks again. Let's bring the picks up, JJ. All right. Well, there's an obvious one for Sari. Sari, you're up. Sari Beth.
Menagerie of Monsters. Well,
good choice.
I mean, actually, let's do WW Education Department. Actually,
which also ties in.
I'm like, I don't want to talk about monsters this early. So, I mean, right now, something that I mentioned that I was trying to not watch the news or have anything to do with it last night. Just gonna have a cozy night in, watch something chill on Netflix. And then we were talking about the show this morning, and you brought up Linda McMahon. I'm like, what's going on with her lately? And I was like, whoa. They put a stay on. So I don't know if anyone is following this, but Linda McMahon, like a lot of other Trump's picks, has a little sexual assault allegation connected to her. She is not the alleged assaulter, but apparently at she and her husband's watch, there was a guy who was known among the WWE fam to be abusing the teens that he hired as. I don't know anything about WWE. I guess I have to learn about it now that she's going to be my Department of Ed secretary, since I work in education. But I guess they have people who clean up the rings, and this guy hired a bunch of young boys for his liking and abuse, and they press charges. But I guess there's a statute of limitations they need to review, and so conveniently. Yeah. There's a stay on this allegation, this case until conveniently the end of August, long after she'll probably get confirmed or not. So, weird how that happened, right?
Yeah, it seems to keep happening. I mean, but as a pick at all, I mean, she has no education experience, right? I mean,
that aside, I mean, here's the thing: that's the salacious element of it. But even that aside, yes, there's been a history of other picks, Betsy DeVos, who have not had any background in education at all. William Bennett's another, but
she was good for rapists because I'm on the board of the Rape Foundation for 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and we worked for like 10 years to get kids that were accused of raping their fellow students off campus until they're proved innocent. And she put them right back on.
She sure did. Yeah. So that's just some precedent about what's going to happen with her. The story of Linda McMahon is she dabbled in education when she was on a board briefly, and she lied to get on that board, saying that she had an education. She was majored in education.
Oh, that's right.
But meanwhile, want to know what it was? She confused an education degree with a French degree. Happens all the time, eh?
Oh, yeah, totally the same.
Oh, I majored in French, not education. No, she wanted to be a French teacher. So you know what? I want to be a lawyer. Why don't you just give me a job as a lawyer right now? Like, seriously, why not?
Exactly. Right? Yeah. I mean, it's just nuts. And again, they've also talked about dismantling the Department of Education. While we got you're a teacher, 20 years. What does that mean? I mean, when we talk about dismantled Department of Education, what will that mean for you? I mean, as a teacher, I mean, what are you hearing? You're part of Teachers Unify. I mean, it sounds as a lot. I think a lot of Americans, it's sort of an esoteric conversation. When you say get rid of DOE, what does that mean?
Well, the Department of Ed is a relatively new department, although it has its foundations in like the 19th century. But as an actual part of the executive branch, this is like late 1970s. What it means, let me just tell it to you straight. In the rural and urban communities that need the help the most, especially for kids with special needs, that money will go away. And it's the people who need it the most who will get hurt. Many of the people who voted for Donald Trump. But it's not just going to be the people who voted for Trump who are going to hurt, like you've said. It's everyone who will get hurt, right? Public education is key for our nation, for like closing those gaps. And like you were saying too, Heather, about the Department of Ed is there to investigate civil rights abuses, sexual assault, stuff like that. Both of
I don't like that part.
Yeah.
My mom was a special ed teacher for 36 years.
Wow.
And, you know, the amount of work that she has to put in, they've always been peeling away at public education. But I think the goal is to create a permanent, overburdened underclass of low-wage workers with no education, no information, no choice or recourse. Yep. And that's when the Supreme Court comes after class action lawsuits, and then it's all.
Yeah, and that's the thing. What's the best antidote to stopping misinformation? Education. And so that it's not a coincidence that they're coming for that. I mean, you know, the attacks on teachers, public school teachers, calling us groomers and pedophiles, which they did for years now. That's not an attack on us. That's an attack on our kids. That's an attack on the basic right to education in this country. That is it's like the most important thing for a democracy. And they want to get rid of it so that they can have an educated masses voting for them.
Well, Peter Thiel and all those bros don't like unproductive people, and they just consider anybody with a disability useless.
Yep, they do.
So they don't want to deal with them.
Yeah, it's scary. And of course, you know, I've seen people in the chat talking about Alabama. I live close. I'm in Missouri. Missouri is, of course, many of our schools have gone to 4-day school weeks.
Right.
You know, in Arkansas, they're trying. I mean, it does seem to be and you guys are both activists. It's almost like a concerted effort to get kids in the workforce. You know, Sarah Huckabee Sanders lowered the working age. You know, it's less education, make them work young. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to go, what the hell, right?
Yeah. Trigger you, the slaves are happy.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, you know? Yeah, I agree. So, all right, you know, go ahead. Do you have something else, Sari? I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's, you know, I think it's the funding. And I think the biggest thing that we're going to feel is the attacks on kids who need the special education services. That's going to go away. And unless you're rich, you're not going to be able to get those services anymore.
Even ESL, you know?
Well, that's it. And that's the thing. These are the services. And then, of course, oversight, like Title X and these other oversight functions, which is really what they're going after. And this all came out. I mean, circling back to what you said earlier, Sari, it comes from the attacks on teachers, the CRT and the DEI. And, of course, Christopher Rufo's big push about our transgender kids. I mean, I think it all ties into that, doesn't it, in the end?
Yeah. And also and if you look and see where her money goes in terms of education philanthropy, it's to the charter school movement, which we also know it's basically a way of taking money away from public schools. And giving
it's to the Christian, their twisted version of Christianity, their schools.
Yep.
Yeah. Great. All right. Bring up the picks, JJ. We got to pick more. All right. Heather, you're back up again. What do you want?
Menagerie of monsters.
You touched it. You know, you touched it earlier. I mean, we talked about the cabinet picks, but it's not just that. I mean, there's ones we haven't even heard about yet. I mean, there are a lot of jobs still not filled, right? I mean, and you've been watching this from California. I mean, let's just start there. Which is the scariest monster you've seen so far?
I think I could give a big donation to the inauguration, and I'll get something if I want. I was about that. You know, Tom Barrack used to live next door to me, and I was thinking of calling him up and going, "How much do we have to give?" And he would help me, and just give a big chunk of money, and see if I can get a job in the administration. It could be funny.
It would be entertaining if nothing else. I mean, I obviously Gates came and went. That was probably one of the most horrible ones. But of course, I think Kash Patel kind of is for me in a lot of ways. A lot of the reasons because he's so. I don't know if you guys saw.
He'll get dinged early.
He'll get dinged.
I think so. You think he'll be? Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like going. I mean,
rings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
Go ahead.
I feel like some of them are distractors, and I feel like they're timed together. Like that I feel like everyone freaked out about Matt Gaetz, rightfully so. But if you remember, the two picks rolled out that day. I mean, there might have been others in the morning, but I specifically remember walking down the street and cursing because, I'm super chill.
Yeah, you are famously chill.
Yeah, I'm
Hey, Heather too. Both of you are famously chill people.
So chill.
Yeah, Heather's on her second cigarette, you guys.
Yeah,
this is my second caffeine, and it's like 11 a.m. I have some rocking and rolling on my caffeine. I had a Celsius coffee, super chill. But I started screaming on the phone to my mom, who is on board with, and my dad too, when I saw Tulsi Gabbard. Because like Matt Gaetz, yes, that's freaking crazy. I don't know if you can curse.
Oh yeah. That's
fucking crazy. It's fucking crazy with a hard G. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But Tulsi Gabbard is a spy. Like Russia is celebrating her. She chilled. Like you were. Like, I mean, come on. And
they said our girl, our
girls. She got it. Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard. So I would love, and I did a video on this too. I would love for people to start screaming from the rooftops about that, not just me and you all, because that is dangerous. I'm hoping this, like you were saying in your opening news spot, I'm hoping that the Assad Syria news will bring her back in the spotlight in the Monday news cycle.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
It's crazy. What about you, Heather? Which is Tulsa your favorite too, or what else?
She she does have intelligence experience. It's just Viktor Orban and Vladimir Putin and Assad's
our enemies. Yeah.
What about Stephen Chung, that odd job guy who's
great choice. See, we have not delved deep enough.
Cut people's heads off.
Seb Gorka. Seb
Gorka.
How can we forget Gorka?
Nazi medals and
I forgot about him.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm not saying cabinet picks. It is just a menagerie. I mean, Gorka's back in there,
freaks and skells. It's the whole pantheon of
well, I mean, and also with all this talk of, what about all this talk of when you wrote chickens, I was like, are we talking about bird flu here? And no, but let's talk about bird flu because let's talk about it. Like, do we need to get our masks out? Because I don't trust. I mean, RFK, Mr. Anti-Vaccine,
Oz has got this. Oz has got it.
And Oz and RFK are gonna, and they're gonna stop the bird flu from taking over. I'm so sure.
Oz will find a way for us to lose weight with it.
RFK will just give us brain worms and that'll stop it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's so easy to get wrapped up in the cabinet picks.
Yes.
But like I said, the second ones, the ones are going to the White House because they're owed favors and they don't have to be. And see, look, you guys understand. These are the guys that don't have to go to. People ask me all the time, well, Gorka will never get Senate approval. Like, he's not going before the Senate. If they're working the White House staff, just like Stephen Miller, and that's how Bannon got in last time. I mean, Bannon's still out there flowing.
Get certified or anything.
No, just there is personal staffs that can do whatever they want. So it's a little bit scary what they can bring in there and who they can bring in, And so, again, we talk about we talk about having Gorka, we talk about having, I mean, we still have Bannon out there floating and now he's out of jail. He might go to jail, thankfully, because New York's not dropping their case on him. But I mean, for me, you guys know I'm being sued by Mike Flynn, for God's sake. I have a $150 million lawsuit against me for a tweet, single tweet, right?
Still suing you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You guys didn't hear? I don't talk about it much. So it was 3 tweets originally. It got down to 1 tweet, but they held it $150 million. So the federal court decided that he's also suing Rick Wilson. He's suing a lot of people, but he's suing Rick Wilson in Florida court for similar tweets, to be honest, almost the same ones. So
what did he say?
Can you say?
It literally says, I'll tell you what its funny part is. It has to do with who he's paid by. And I said, don't be fooled, he is paid by this person. And they said it should have been was paid by that person.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm not making this up. It's the tense of the word.
It's the tense?
The tense of is versus was. I'm not making this up.
Stop it.
So the federal judge, you can't make this up. So state court dismissed Rick Wilson's case and Flynn appealed it. So Flynn appealed it. And so our federal court judge said, hey, since the case is so similar and we kind of follow Florida law in federal court, we're going to wait to see what the resolution of the appeal is. So they argued the appeal for Wilson's case and essentially mine September 10th, and we're still waiting for results from the Florida Appeals Court. But yeah, it's a year now. It's been a year that we've been handing. Yeah. Yeah. So shout out to Mark Zaid and Brad Moss, my lawyers.
Oh yeah.
You know,
found a place for Flynn.
Right. I mean, well, that's the thing.
Grifting skills. They're going to find it.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn this off. Yeah, so you got it's weird. Flynn's still out there. I mean, that's what kind of gets me going is the strap hangers that aren't, like you said, Stephen Chung and all these guys. I mean, there's a lot of folks that could join that are kind of nutty. So it is still out there, I think, and still crazy. But yeah, there's a lot going on that we don't even know about now. So, but yeah, I think that's what we have to talk about. And it's funny, like you said, Sarah, early in the conversation, is so many of these guys are kind of falling through the cracks, if you will, right now, because there's so many more high profile cranks and lunatics.
There's just too many to keep track of.
It is.
Fires
of freaks. I like that.
I used to lobby with Bobby Kennedy. I used to.
No kidding.
Wow.
And he's not the same dude.
Yeah, what happened?
I don't know. My girlfriend grew up with him and I think did heroin with him. And
so did a lot of people.
She says he's not the same as when he was doing it.
Well, didn't he say that made him smarter and do better in school?
Who?
He said it made him smarter and do better in school.
No.
Yep.
No, he did. He did.
Wow.
No.
Wow.
He was a brilliant lawyer, but he always had that kind of wanting to be a star show buddy thing. I loved his departed wife, and I just thought they were a really nice couple, and he was really bright about the way he wrote the law with John Adams and everything. And then
something happened.
Something snapped.
Wow, what a fascinating, that's just, I mean,
like
you've seen the arc of it.
And then he went MAGA, which is just like.
It reminds me of Royds. The weirdness. And look at how his face has changed, and he's got a 6-pack at his age. That means something.
He likes to show us that.
Yeah, he was
a little weird.
Extreme guy, like he'd go do civil disobedience, but.
Oh, wow. All right, JJ, let's bring up the picks again. We got more to talk about. I guess the last one. This is good. You guys did it really good because I want to talk about. So what do I mean with building? I'm taking it. Building communities, the last one, and that's kind of what I want to talk to both of you about, because it is a time. One of the things I talk about in the show a lot is, a lot of people ask me. I mean, I'm sure, Sari Beth, you get the same thing. And even you, Heather, like, what can I do? Like, in light of all this, what should I be doing? And I've come up with a list. We talked about it last week too. Hey, look, we're going to be talking with Dan Helmer and Milo about local elections and laws that are still being passed later in the show. But I took, there are elections starting as early as there's special elections in Virginia in January, right? Yeah. We talk about, but a lot of people talk about, what can I do nationally right now, or look, I always say start local, but start in a community, figure out your community. And so, Sari Beth, you've got Teachers Unify. Yeah. I know, Heather, you've got a number of things you get involved with. I mean, you guys have found that's very important. It's part of our democracy too, is finding a way to find a community in the issues, right? No, you found, Sari Beth?
Find your community and a good tech guy.
I like that.
That's a good point. Obviously, we're struggling. Poor JJ's. You guys, JJ's behind the scenes trying to figure this out.
JJ's been working harder than us right now.
Yeah. I know. JJ's working his ass off behind the scenes, y'all. You don't know. That's why, by the way, when I look down the screen, I'm watching JJ pull his hair out.
Yeah. He's doing
Sari Beth, what about you? I mean, you found community as a teacher.
Yes.
Organizing is important, right? And again, anytime, right?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. It's like, I felt really, I was struggling myself, obviously, and still am, since the election results. And I had a lot of people who follow me and are in my community online asking me, like, what do I do? Where do I go? Like the next day, which is a good sign, because people didn't feel beaten down. I mean, people felt beaten down and depressed and awful. Helpless. But I think that as much as we've seen the problems with bots and everything and manipulating what people are thinking with misinformation online, I think that there are communities that exist that existed around this election and other elections. We need to galvanize them. But I do think that, like, aside from online communities, just like offline community, I think that's so important right now. We lost so much of that during the pandemic. And I love these panels online. It makes it more convenient. We're in different places. It's the only way to do it. But I think just like convening with people from your local community and just having discussions about where you're at, how you're feeling is so important right now. And it's like, it doesn't even have to be about politics all the time. It could just be about, like, supporting each other and whatever you're going through day to day, so we don't lose hope. Because I know I feel hopeless. I didn't even, I had to keep going. I had to go to school the next day, but I found strength in that community and hearing how the students are feeling, supporting them in their fears with this new administration. And I do think that it's like, whether it's like your, fellow actors, fellow teachers, fellow activists, fellow neighborhood people, that's a way to get started. But then we do need to take it to the next level now. Like, we can help each other right now in these communities, but we really do need to realize that that 2 years goes by real fast, and it's really not 2 years. We need to really start looking at these local elections, state elections, and midterms, because everything from, speaking of schools, school boards, start looking at your school board, figuring out whose Moms for Liberty is put in there, and find someone to run against them and help them. So take these communities of feeling helpless and find your agency together.
And start attending things. Go to city council meetings. Go to school board meetings. Go to PTA meetings.
Yes.
You're entitled as a taxpayer to go whether you have a kid in school or not. But if you start going and protecting things too is very important. Subscribe to local papers. Subscribe and support libraries, because they're going to be attacked hard. Bookstores, independent bookstores and booksellers.
And issues you care about. I think the second part of that community topic, when I talk about a lot, is like, look, a lot of things we care about are going to be attacked, right? I'm a veteran. I talk about veterans issues a lot. That's close to the community I know. It's my community. Heather, like you said, you've been involved in the Rape Foundation. You've been involved in those issues. Those issues are going to come up. And I believe still, and I think the Matt Gaetz walking away thing is a proof of it, that the trouble for Pete Hegseth is proof of it. Public pressure does still work, right, ladies? I mean, you guys are very good at, you have very big online communities you built. Public pressure still work. I mean, you know that, Heather. You've made a business of it in a lot of ways, haven't you, Heather?
Yeah. I'm a big dirt digger and a big believer in dirt digging, verified dirt digging.
Yeah, and it works. There are. I mean, they've got very small majorities. I know the Senate's 53, but we're talking they can't afford to lose 1 or 3 Republicans in the House right now.
Yeah.
So,
they will sweep anything under the rug. It's a rape thing. It was years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
He was loaded screaming Muslims years ago.
Yeah, that's just irrelevant now. Yeah, right. That's not who he is.
Jesus. He gets to declare chapter 11 on everything he ever did. And it's a state.
Yep.
I have to repent.
I think that this is from Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny, which I think a lot of people have reread again. And I just bought a couple I'm just going to give them out to people whenever I feel like they're in need. It's like it's my Bible. But
I need to get him on the show.
I know. But it's definitely important. And I think his first chapter is do not obey in advance, right? And we see some people doing that, but we as a community need to strengthen. That's why community is important. Together, we can remind each other to not obey in advance and make it difficult. Everything they're trying to do, I'm going to use it as a verb now. They're going to try to Project 2025 us, and we need to make it as difficult as possible for them to do it. And that includes that the first step is not obeying in advance and speaking out and not letting them intimidate us. And I thought the purge you were talking about was like purging us, like don't let them purge us.
Yeah. The scary one. Yeah. I kind of thought so too. Yeah, I agree. I was like, oh man, that's coming too. And what are the issues you're looking for, Sari Beth? I mean, what are the things you're going to fight?
I'm going to fight for public education, obviously. I'm going to, I'm going to basically, I think the umbrella is defend democracy. And I think everything that goes underneath that, reproductive rights. I have a lot of trans kids, their rights, they're coming to me so scared right now. I'm going to fight for everyone. I'm going to fight for my dream of a multiracial democracy. Right? I mean, that's the goal here, right? Yes, we have partially one, but I'm going to fight kind of.
Well, yeah, during Reagan, it was better. I mean,
yeah. And what about you, Heather? I mean, what are the issues you're going to surround yourself with? I may have lost you for a second there.
Oh, I think he has to.
All good, JJ. I think I lost Heather for a moment there. We're all good.
We're all good.
There you are. You're back. We were saying, Heather, what do you, I mean, you've obviously got a lot of activity you do. What are you focusing on right now and kind of preparing for?
Well, as a general canopy, I'm going to be working with Fund for the Feminist Majority. And that's like my old OG lady. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Good. And of course, the other thing we found in, go ahead.
The feminist stuff, because women are getting attacked. The rape. I'm watching how language is being changed. They start calling rape victims accusers. Planned Parenthood even gives tests you for all cancer. Like that.
I mean, and all these groups are going to need help. And I think, the one thing we see after an election. Yeah. And they'll need help because after election, donations kind of fall for a bit. People kind of take a step back.
I think we should set up a fund kind of for, I would really like to set up a security fund for people that are threatened.
That's a great idea.
Where you can get a security service to assess the threats and the phone calls. I would love to do that.
There is something like that. I'll tell you about it. There actually is.
Getting doxxed and threatened. That makes me sick. And I would love, I have security services. I have access to them. I can talk to these guys and see if they'll give some free help to people.
Yeah.
And speaking of security, I mean, I also want to just say quickly that just to give a shout out to Teachers Unified and gun violence. We're not done. Yes, we might probably lose the Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the White House, but we're not giving up. Gun violence is still obviously here in this country, and we're going to continue to empower educators to speak about that.
Yeah, it's a huge issue, and we're going to have to fight even more. It's interesting. I haven't heard a lot of gun chatter from this administration yet, but I'm sure it's out there in some way. It has to be a kind of a local issue, and of course, local elections. Right? We've got 31 states having elections. I think New York's one of them. As a matter of fact, the local elections are going to matter more than ever. We're going to have to fight for those. One. And it sends a message, right? Local elections, statewide elections are a way that even in every democracy, it sends a message and lets people know. What's going on. So I think that's really important. So what's next for you guys?
What's next? What's next for you, Heather?
Yeah.
Next for me, I'm going to put some hats on some chickens. I've got about 300 gifts to get out. I'm upstairs making boxes of stuff for people. Like I'll throw in like a life straw because our water's going to get polluted. Maybe a survivor kit, and then some death-defying tricks to do after dinner. It's a book where you do things like you open a wine bottle without a corkscrew, or you put something on fire at the table and watch it burn. And you're supposed to master these things before you go to the dinner party, so you're actually good at them and you don't cause a catastrophe. But
kitchen on fire.
Drinking games, tequila I throw in always, and I got blow mold light up chickens for Christmas.
It's going to be very chicken focus centric. What about you, Sari Beth? I guess you got Christmas break coming up for school.
Yeah, Christmas. I was like, wow, my plans. my plans don't sound as fun. I need to have some more explosion in my plans.
I know. Yeah, there's
Like,
definitely not
tequila and
violence.
I need more tequila and fire. I mean, not in the
Yeah.
classroom. I have 2 more weeks of school, then we get a week off. I am going to hopefully finally watch some films that are not related to current events and read some fiction novels. And just like try to unplug a little, and I'll probably not do any of that.
Yeah.
A
But
little
yeah,
Yeah.
self-care.
It's a great theory, right? Yeah. It sounds like a
I
great theory.
You've been working through all this.
I need to, because I literally was in Pennsylvania, came to school on the day after election day, and never stopped. And people were like, "How are you keeping doing that?" I'm like, "Because the students need me." And it was they didn't think I was going to come in the day after election day, because they knew how much they follow me online. They saw me in Pennsylvania. They knew how important this was to me, and it was a big deal to them that I showed up.
Your
So
heart's broken.
that was great, but like I also need to look out for myself, and like, I need to show up for my own self. So I'm going to try to do that over my Christmas break. We'll see if I
It's
can
funny
do
you
it.
say that, because I had, my community is obviously veterans, and
Yeah.
I think Thursday I woke up and I'm not gonna lie, it was hard to get out of bed. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
that was rough. It's not, I was really sure we were good. I thought we were in good shape,
I know.
and it was rough, and God bless my fiance. She came in and kind of dragged my ass out of bed. And there's a group of Democratic veterans that were meeting on a regular basis every week, led by a guy named Charlie Conrad in Virginia. And I think we've told this story previously. If I did, forgive me, fans. And I said, it was meeting at like 8:30 my time. I was like, I'll get on. I got on like 8:40, and it really helped. I mean, having that group to kind of talk, and we're all kind of figuring out, all right, what's next. I mean, obviously, I worry about the Trump administration, obviously, because I am being sued by Mike Flynn. I've got to pass. This Lincoln Project guy, they're not a fan. So a lot of us are worried. And the most wonderful thing happened. There's a woman named Caitlin who, if you guys don't follow the news in Virginia much, which we'll talk Virginia news, and Delegate Helmer joins us, but there was a move in Virginia. They defunded a really wonderful education program for veterans and their family members. Oh. It's just politics. It got defunded. But what happened was they brought together a bipartisan group of folks to protest this, because it affected everybody. And Caitlin put up this picture on the Zoom we were on of, she's like, Fred, see that lady next to me? She's a Republican, and she had a big sign up saying, restore the funds, and they got these funds restored to the Virginia budget for veterans who were 100% disabled to get free college and their kids. And I guess she was a great point. And that's when I started talking about this issue you guys just talked about. I was like, there are issues that unite us. People like to say, well, veterans voted for Trump, so they get what they want. No veterans actually voted to defund completely the VA, right? that wasn't no plans whatsoever. Nobody talked about that. And now Vivek's out there talking about it. So there are going to be issues that unite us that we're going to have to fight to preserve this country, aren't there? Yep. Well, I really appreciate you guys. I know JJ's trying to go working behind the scenes to get our guests. That's okay. We're live. It's okay. I just really appreciate your time, guys. Heather's been a joy finally connecting with you. Thanks for getting up so early in California for us, and I just appreciate all the things you guys do for us and all the things you do for America.
Well, I've been going to grandchild plays. I went to one on Friday night. I went to one yesterday.
Oh, that's so nice.
That gives me all the joy, and I can feed on that to go out and fight some more.
Yeah,
I love it. Well, that's a great plan right there. I mean,
Plays
that's a perfect plan. I think.
Programs, I love them.
Yep. All right. Well, ladies, I'll let you go. Thank you for joining us on Sunday morning. Appreciate you. We'll get you back on again soon. In the meantime, have a great week.
Okay.
Thanks for having us, Fred.
Yeah. Bye now.
Thanks, Fred.
Bye.
Thank you. So, great panel. Let's talk about our sponsors. We are so fortunate to be sponsored by Constituent Connection. I mean, are you thinking about running for office? You can let Constituent Connection help you get your campaign running and provide you the tools proven to help you win. Anyone who's worked in politics will tell you that data is one of the hardest things to afford and is often out of reach for small campaigns. Constituent Connection provides a full suite of data and campaign tools for any size campaign. They are built for the local level and enable campaigns to use every dollar to the fullest extent. You talk to the real people, build your base, and it's built to actually save our democracy instead of making people rich. There are three key tools that any campaign that runs for office needs. You need affordable email, You need best-in-class texting, and you need a really good tool for voter relationship management. So you knock on the right doors, or you knock on doors that are going to listen to you. ConCon has helped candidates for Congress, candidates for school board win. Our data has been used to help get petition signatures safely and quickly by precisely targeting the right homes in the area that are needed using both commercial data and the voter rolls. The mission of Constituent Connection is simple. They make campaigns for efficient, effective, and competitive at an affordable rate. I'm proud to work with Constituent Connection to help campaigns of any size. You can find out more at constituentconnection.com. Constituent Connection should be your first call for success if you're running for office this cycle, especially all these local races we've been talking about during the show. I'm so proud to be a part of Constituent Connection. Check them out now. It's constituentconnection.com. So thank you. Wow, we have a great thing. We got our guests. Oh my God, I see all the guests. We're in really great shape. So let's welcome Milo. Milo, come on in. I'm glad to have you join us. All right, you're here. Great to see you, Milo. You made it. I know you got a busy morning. You guys, so you understand, Milo Vassallo and I connected online ages ago. He DM'd me on Blue Sky. And then last night, what time, Milo? It was like 11 p.m. I DM'd you like, hey, dude, want to do the show tomorrow? You know?
So, huge fan. Absolutely take you up anytime you ask me that question.
Well, I appreciate it, man. It's great to finally connect in person. For those who don't know, he's executive of the Media and Democracy Project. MAD is a nonpartisan grassroots membership organization fighting for more informative, independent media operating in the public interest. You got a lot going on. Tell us about MAD. Tell us about what you guys are doing and what you're fighting.
Great. Hey, thanks for being flexible. Very happy to be here. And where I stand in this fight for our democracy is advocating for a better informed America. Bottom line is you are what you eat. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans are underinformed, misinformed, and we've seen disinformed. And so we've got a nonpartisan group. That's a common thing. We need a common sense of information, sense of reality, whether it's vaccines or the climate crisis or the actual challenge we face. And so we're a group that's been around for 4 years, all volunteer, civic oriented, and we're actually engaged specifically in actions. So we're an action oriented group. We're not a think tank that just writes white papers. We actually come up with discrete actions, and happy to share with you some of the things that we think people should be doing right now. And would just like to say as an aside, grateful that you create this space for people to commune around democracy. And we, like you, want to do stuff and not just talk about how bad things may be and getting worse, which they are, but what can we do about it?
Yeah, I love it. Well, glad to have you. So tell me a little bit about, what you're doing as far like the Press Act. Like one of the things you talked to me about, I saw you guys are pushing really hard. The Press Act, tell us about the Press Act, where it's at and what that's supposed to do.
Okay, so we do know that we can learn a lot from the state of our democracy and where it may be heading, and likely is heading when we look at authoritarianism around the world. And we know that journalists are often some of the first targets of authoritarianism because journalists are the truth tellers, the reality tellers. Who speaks truth to power? Citizens can only mount a response to threats that they perceive as told and informed by their information sources. And journalists are the gatekeepers and producers of that. So we see and have joined a multi-civic org effort to advocate for a piece of legislation that is to protect journalists and their sources. Remember, journalists can find corruption, they can hold power to account, but the work they do is essential to democracy. It is one of the pillars of democracy, and journalists themselves are under threat. That's why if I'm sure you've seen that famous meme of all the empty chairs in Vladimir Putin's Russia, is journalists are the targets of authoritarians. So there are ways that journalists are threatened, both physically, with lawfare, with economic threats, such as challenges. If we use Maria Ressa, the Nobel Prize winning journalist from the Philippines, who's been sounding the alarm about threats to press and the power of digital platforms and manipulating people, that the journalists, that famous first they came for the, then they came for the. We look at it, when they come for the journalists, nobody knows anything. And so journalists are really a critical piece of where we are and where we're heading. So we've joined this multi-civic org effort that also has in separate capacity been basically to protect journalists and their sources. I mean, who's going to protect when Donald Trump is, as you talked earlier today, I was in the car and I caught, they're talking about, pulling licenses from information sources. Let's just not even talk about, is it NBC, is it CBS? They are talking about decreasing the access to information in the American electorate. That is a threat. So there is a bipartisan effort called the Press Act, which is to protect journalists and their sources. It was passed the House unanimously by a vote, a verbal vote, an oral vote, and it's been in the Senate for a year and change. So we think one of the most important critical things that must happen in the next 22 days is this must become the law of the land, as journalists heading into this maelstrom of authoritarianism need to be protected. This is not a partisan issue. This is an American First Amendment reinforcement issue. That's the overview.
How's I mean, where's this? I mean, it's before the Senate. There's only a days. We're literally down to days at this point. Do you think they're going to get a chance, or is Senator Schumer taking it seriously? Or are they? What do you think is going to happen?
Really good question. We and other journalists. There's civic orgs that are supported this, 100+ organizations, Electronic Fear Foundation, Protect Journalists Foundations. This was in its origin, just to give a tiny bit of an update of why this is extra important. This was bipartisan. On the Senate side, it's Mike Lee and Lindsey Graham. Nobody left or right political spectrum wants journalists to go through no politician, no patriotic American wants the government to be able to go through emails and threaten people and obtrusive, into the intrusive nature of the federal government. So that's been a left-right thing for a long time. This was sitting in the Senate, frankly, for almost 2 years. So we're pissed that this was put on the back burner, but we are coming down. It's the ninth inning. There are 2 outs in the ninth.
Feels like it's always that way,
Chuck Schumer has literally, and with Dick Durbin, for whatever reason, not made this a priority. And this is not a partisan issue. We're not here playing my team, any other team. This is essential to the future of American democracy. As of today, this is very topical. The Washington Post actually wrote an editorial board piece. Talk about waiting till the very end as a news organization. But they had new information in this that Chuck Schumer has now gone on record as saying he will make an effort to get this passed this term. Whether it's directly on a vote through classic legislative mechanisms or passing it in the mandatory defense bill. So there is a chance. There are 2 mechanisms. So as we are an action-based organization, what we've been asking to do, and we're not going to wait and see what Chuck Schumer does next week, is we want all of your audience folks to channel some of that enthusiasm, angst about where we are, to call your U.S. Senator's office tomorrow, especially the local offices. D.C. is going to be overwhelmed. Yes, it's worth doing that than not doing anything. But we find that you're more likely to get a human on the phone by calling your local branch office of your U.S. senator and do at least 2 things. One is you want that senator to advocate and push Chuck Schumer to make sure this happens this term, and also to come out publicly, make that public that post, issue a press release for your U.S. senator, Democratic or Republican. This is not. I live in a red state. My senator is not going to do this. This has been a priority for both Democrats and Republicans. That's our action, and make that happen and help Chuck Schumer feel inspired to make sure this happens.
And the reason I want to talk to you this week, and I appreciate your time. I know we're running late. The reason I want to talk to you so much this week is that issue right there. Everyone recognized that we're facing some challenges. And one of the things I've been saying quite a bit is we need to tighten up these guardrails that unfortunately last time got kind of blown through. And this is a major guardrail, protecting the free press. They have we literally have the guy who's the FBI nominee saying he's going to go after media reps. I mean, so this is really important at this moment as we prepare for a second Trump administration.
Can I add one other piece to this? There are threats to the free press that are both there are threats to the free press, as I mentioned earlier. There are physical threats, and what Donald Trump, frankly, and others do are stochastic terrorism. When you call press the enemy of the people, I mean, we cannot accept that. That's not Trump being Trump. That is that is not a partisan issue. We cannot menace the free press. So we should all support journalists as the truth tellers and pillars of our democracy. That is not a partisan issue. We should reject those who menace them. We think we'll talk at some other point. We'll talk about local journalism, but there is another mechanism of threat that is levered by authoritarians, which is lawfare, taking journalists to court. You've seen it on several examples. Elon Musk has done this to a media organization called Media Matters for America because they produced data that said that some white supremacist content was in the feeds of some neutral, new accounts right next to advertisers. So billionaires are aligning, as we've seen, across the board in support of this administration, and they have endless pockets. And journalists do not. They're scraping by. So a threat to the free press is to muscle them by suing them. And you can see some news organizations are getting afraid. They're circling. I don't know if you saw that episode of, there's a clip on socials, I too, and we are big advocates for the Blue Sky platform, of Mika and Joe talking. I think David Frum made a comment as a guest on a talk show. Making a comment that he said something to the effect of, well, talking about the history, the sordid history personally of one of the nominees, said if you're too drunk for Fox, you're too drunk for, you're too drunk or something along those lines. They actually asked him to leave the show and did not have him for the second portion of the show, and issued an apology that people's opinions are different, and we all need to get along. I mean, this is the United States of America. Like Second Amendment gets a lot of attention, and we feel it's important that First Amendment get a lot more attention. And so news organizations are beginning to kowtow and obey in advance, or be complicit, frankly, about minimizing threats to the free press. So there's another bill, I just want to get this in, that has been introduced in the last 96 hours by a couple of senators, which is to protect journalists from lawsuits. It's an anti-SLAPP bill. So people can file frivolous lawsuits if you've got limitless pockets and take this journalist and say, we think you've done X, Y, and Z and defamed me. And a journalist is now required in the United States of America to mount a legal response. Well, how do you go if Elon Musk wants to sue every journalist in America for telling truth about Tesla automobiles, what his role is in the federal government, his conflicts of interest? He could sue every journalist in America. It wouldn't change his pocketbooks at all. We need to protect journalists from these frivolous lawsuits. So there's some legislation that is now in the it's the ninth inning, 2 outs, 2 strikes basically. And these really critical bills, an anti-SLAPP bill, Senator Wyden and others, I think it's just got a number. But we would like, for people who are thinking about these issues, how do you protect journalists here? There are some really important ways to help them by advocating for legislation to protect them, both this Press Act, it's called, and also some anti-SLAPP, this frivolous lawsuit protections to the free press.
Well, I'm a big fan of that, as I'm being sued by Mike Flynn. So with that, I know we're running late crazy today. I can't thank you enough, Milo, for joining us. Tell us where they can find out more about your organization, because obviously we could talk all day, and maybe we should do that. Maybe we'll get you on the regular On Democracy. You just talk for an hour. Tell us at least where they can find you, more information, Milo, and find out what they can do.
Great. Fred, thanks for making this space. Thanks for the community, and some future guests are going to be here in a minute. Thanks for letting us get this in. Critical is how Americans get their information is essential to how we have a community. Media and Democracy Project.org. Google us, Substack, socials. We're on Blue Sky. And thank you so much, Fred, for making this community, and much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Milo, unbelievable. It's such short notice. You jump on here. I know you were traveling last night. And with that, I'll let you go. Thanks for joining us. Good luck on this fight. Keep us posted, and we'll make sure we update our followers.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Yeah. See ya. Man, always entertaining. I mean, look, this is so important. We literally didn't have Milo on the schedule originally, but as he and I talked last night about these important things going on, I thought it was really important to bring him in and talk about this moment. We want you to pay attention. Last week we talked a little bit about the veterans issues we're facing, the bills that are the Dole Act that's facing. Now we talk about the Press Act. There's a lot for the Senate that can do to help us shore up the guardrails before the Trump administration. But let's turn to the next big thing we've been talking about a lot on this show, which is the importance of elections still. I know a lot of people are a little bit despondent right now, but the thing is, elections still matter. There's important elections. I thought no better person to have that than the guy who's helping run them in Virginia. So let's welcome Virginia Delegate Dan Helmer to the show. Dan, man, good to see you. How are you? Welcome on Democracy Sunday.
Great to see you, Fred. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate your flexibility. It's been a nutty day, I know. The drama that goes on behind the scenes, you guys have no idea. But you see me look at the screens because poor JJ is pulling his hair out.
He did a great job.
But Dan, I know you got short time to talk. You got us here. Dan, thanks for taking time. I know you're incredibly busy in Virginia right now. I guess first thing first, I talk a lot about that elections are happening. People say, well, it's 2026. Bro, you got elections like next month, don't you?
We do. I mean, there's a headline in the New York Times right now, Fred. It says, "Did Trump drain Democrats' energy? These races will be the first test." So just
Yep.
popped up in the New York Times. We have two special elections taking place on January 7th. At stake our majorities in the Virginia Senate and the Virginia House, and whether we're able to pass a constitutional amendment to protect abortion rights in Virginia. If we don't win, can't happen. Republicans are mobilizing, and we got to make sure we bring energy to elect two great candidates in J.J. Singh and Kannan Srinivasan.
Yeah, they're terrific candidates. They won their primaries already. And what were those? What date was it? January 7th? I mean,
January 7th. So early voting is about to
geez.
start. I mean, it's just right around the corner. It was a cascade effect created by the congressional election. So a good news
Yeah.
story. The bad news story, though, of course, is we got to hang on to majorities that were hard fought and hard won. In fact, when we flipped the Virginia House last year, that was the first time in 60 years that the party not in the governor's mansion had flipped a
Yeah.
chamber of the General Assembly. And so our work is cut out for us, particularly after we saw movement to the right in Loudoun County, where both of these seats sit.
Yeah, so it's challenging, and so moving right everywhere. But in the end, Virginia is truly one of the last purple states, right? I mean, it goes back and forth. People were shocked 4 years ago or 3 years ago when Youngkin and, of course, Winsome Sears and that interesting characters they brought along swept the state just a year in the Biden administration. And here we are again. You guys have statewide elections, too, in 2025.
We do. We're going to set the tone, right? We have the opportunity to elect an incredible governor, Abigail Spanberger, the first female governor in Virginia history. We have a great slate of candidates down from her. This is the beginning of showing what our democracy can stand for, that we are going to stand for making sure that everybody has access to the middle class, that we're going to fight for world-class education for all of our kids, that we're going to protect our rights, make sure that extremists don't take them away. And it starts right here in Virginia this November.
Wow, you got a lot on your plate. Now, what are you doing? You're leading the effort to help elect Republicans to the House of Delegates, right?
Well, definitely not Republicans. I'm definitely working on electing.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. No, coffee. Oh, man, it's live, so we're screwed. So less Republicans. I don't think you must have misheard. I said less Republicans.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, so I am the campaign chair for the House Democratic Caucus. My job is to make sure that we win elections, and we've got some incredible candidates. Our goal is not just to preserve our majority, but to expand it. And I'm very excited. We have two candidates already who have announced that they're running again. Kimberly Pope Adams down south from here. We've got some incredible candidates out west, and there are lots of people stepping forward right now. And then, of course, we got 4 seats that we have to protect. Guys like Josh Cole and Josh Thomas and Darius Clark, who are all running in critical swing districts. So we're going to get those folks reelected. We're going to expand our majority. We know that we have delivered on the promises that we made 2 years ago in spite of an extreme Republican governor. And with a trifecta, we can make sure that we protect our communities and keep them safe, that we deliver for our schools, that we make sure we protect the constitutional right to abortion here in Virginia.
And you're sending a message. I mean, for people watching across the country, New Jersey has a governor's race as well. I know Mikey Sherrill and others are running. I think Mike is going to join us next week, as a matter of fact. There's a lot. These are important races. 31 states have local elections. 2 have Supreme Court elections. And that's 2025, folks. I mean, primaries for those states start in February. So there's a lot going on. I mean, so Dan, how do you feel as an elected and as a person who's helping elect Democrats? I got it right that time. Are you worried about the energy? Are you worried that people are burned out? And how are you going to fight that?
Well, Fred, I mean, I am worried. Anybody who looks at what happened this November should be worried. Yeah. But then I turn to a candidate like Lily Franklin, who was in a Trump district and lost by fewer than 200 votes in 2021. If we had just got her a little bit of extra help, right? A little bit of extra help. Or Kimberly Pope Adams, who lost by less than 50 votes in what was then a Biden district, we could have won. And we have almost 60 seats out of 100 that Kamala Harris won in the House of Delegates if we had run in those seats this year. And so we have a tremendous opportunity to demonstrate that when we provide messages that connect and then we deliver for the American people that we can win. And somehow I think that Virginia is going to demonstrate exactly how you win. I think we set a formula in place in 23, right? We beat the odds. We can do that again in 25. We can do it all the way from the top of the ticket all the way down to our house seats, and even we have school boards and things like that that are up. I think this is the beginning of showing what Democrats stand for and how Democrats win. And so, am I worried? Yes, my job is to be worried, right? I worry about seats, right? Like that. We worry about.
You're an Army officer too, so you get
it. So I'm worried, and if people want to help, I'm worried about these two special elections because people take some of these seats for granted, and they can be very low turnout elections. So if you're feeling bad, it's okay, right? If you're feeling it's rough, it's okay. But the thing to do right now is to kind of dust yourself off, right? And say, okay, I know what this democracy can be. I know what this country can be. We faced a setback. It is not the end. America's best days are ahead of us. And they're only going to be there if we work together to make sure that we elect incredible candidates who reflect our values and show that when we win, we can deliver for the American people. And that's what we're fighting to do in Virginia.
That's a great place to wrap up. I know you've got to run to another meeting. I was able to squeeze you in between car rides. Where can people find out more information? We got people across the country who watch our show. We're very blessed. How can they help you in your work?
So, Fred, we need help right now to make sure we get the message out about these swing districts that we need to win, or these special elections that we need to win. My leadership pack is at secureprogress.org, secureprogress.org. You can also find us on Act Blue. We raise resources to make sure we put directly into all those frontline seats. And so if you're able to go there, if you're able to donate, if you want to send me a note, dan@danhelmer.com, we can connect you with ways to canvass, ways to make phone calls, ways to help these candidates. And we would love to have your support to make sure we hold these critical majorities this January 7th, and then we expand them next November. And we need everybody on board to do that across the country.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Dan, good luck. Thanks for taking time for us here on the Box. I look forward to talking to you again and keeping track of how it goes. And if we can help, we'll definitely be there to help, because this is important for us to demonstrate our democracy still works. So many people are afraid elections won't happen ever again, but we've got them in a couple of weeks. So good luck.
Okay? That's great to be on. I know you and I swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution in uniform. We're taking a different approach now, and it's incredibly important. This is a great country, and it's worth fighting for. So thanks so much. It was great to see you.
Likewise. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you.
Man, a lot going on, Virginia. And I really wanted to talk to Dan specifically because, you've heard me talking a lot that how important these elections are. I've shown you that graphic a few times of 31 states now. We used to be 30, but Alabama passed laws, and now Alabama's having laws, having local elections this year. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I know everybody's tired. I get that you're tired, and I get you're angry in a lot of ways. And we see that online. You guys know me. I'm very online to the point of being ridiculous. But this is so important. As you looked at all the guests we had today, from Heather and Sari Beth in New York and California, talk about the building community, both locally and around issues you care about. You saw Milo talking about the importance of protecting our press, the free media. That was demonstrated in South Korea, how important that is. They tried to shut down the press immediately. And then, of course, Dan comes in and talks about how important local elections still are. That is not going away. We have 2 seats. Imagine that. If they win these 2 seats in January, they'll have the majority big enough to override any vetoes and pass protecting women's rights to abortion in Virginia, all the things that have been threatened by the Republicans. So this is next month. So I wanted to bring together a group this week to tell you about those things. And then last thing I'll tell you and this, we joke that this is the what grinds my gears section. We'll let you go. But, one of the things that's been, shocking this week is I was kind of shocked when I posted on Blue Sky. So you follow me on Blue Sky, I hope you do, at fpwellman.bluesky, etc. I didn't think that one of the most controversial things I'd ever post online was that assassinations in the streets are bad. And a lot of folks kind of came at me saying, "Oh, you're tone policing us because we're all angry at the healthcare." And this comes out of the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And let's talk about that. He was killed Wednesday morning with kind of a shocking, brazen killing as he was going to a shareholders meeting. Reports are that the shell casings they found on the ground had deny, defend, and depose written on them, echoing the complaints, a book that was written about how the health insurance industry undermines patients when they've been turned down for care and they sue. They found just the guy fled. The New York Police Department just yesterday found the shooter's backpack in Central Park near the Carousel, which is a pretty heavily trafficked place. It was only filled. Get this, you guys. The backpack was only filled with a jacket and Monopoly money. The shooter, was tracked to the bus station near George Washington Bridge and has since disappeared. He's in the wind, and they're still looking for him. And the response to this killing has been somewhat disconcerting. Thousands of people have been telling stories of being denied treatments by United. And look, there's no reason. I mean, Brian, this guy, when you dig into his life and you dig into his compensation package, there's some really insane things. His insane compensation package worth millions. The fact that denials of care under his CEO leadership skyrocketed from like 8.7% of their patients to 25% of medical requests were denied under CEO Thompson's leadership. Literally killing people. I mean, that's the thing. That's why people are angry. That the healthcare industry in America is tough. The healthcare insurance industry is deeply broken. We have to admit, when they're touting the millions they're making over denying healthcare, that is a problem and worth a lot of anger. On top of that, we find out after his death, he's being investigated for insider trading. That when it came to light, he had sold off millions of dollars of stocks days before a report about this investigation caused their stock to plummet. So let's be honest. It's hard to say that Mr. Thompson was a good dude, okay? And I get the anger at them. But here's what I want to bring up. And Jay, you kind of bring up these pictures that I have. I served in Iraq for 3 combat tours, right? And if you've heard me talk about my experience in Iraq, when I first went over, I was actually an aviator, a Black Hawk helicopter battalion. And once we secured our location, I was at Key West Air Base in northern Iraq. One of my missions when I got there was to work with the civilian population around the air base. I became what we call a civil affairs officer. I was a pilot, but in those days we did what we did. And so my job was to interact with the local civilians and work with them. Show the next picture, actually, JJ. And I had an interpreter named Bassam, who's the gentleman on the right of your screen, and a local Dr. Muhammad. Dr. Muhammad's on the left of the screen, the man in the outfit. And we worked together closely. Bassam was a Christian from Mosul. Dr. Muhammad's a Sunni Arab from the local region. He ran a village just outside our base. We built schools. We built 22 schools. We built 2 clinics. That's actually the clinic. That picture that with the art behind it is a clinic in Dr. Muhammad's clinic, and he's an actual doctor in his village. The art you see behind us was part of a project called Operation Fred, where we shipped over 4,000 pounds of supplies from civilians in America. This is way back in 2003. The reason I bring these gentlemen up and the other gentleman is this. All 3 of the men you've seen in those pictures, aside from me, were assassinated. Dr. Muhammad was first blown up in 2006 in a car bomb. A bomb was planted underneath the road near his village. And then when the Americans pulled out of Key West in 2011, Al-Qaeda terrorists or ISIS terrorists came into his village, the clinic, that room you're looking at in that picture, pulled out guns and executed him in the clinic in a vigilante killing. Bassam next to him, shortly after I left Iraq, about 4 months after I left Iraq, that first tour, Bassam was kidnapped from his shop and beheaded on camera. And the video of that was distributed. Go back to that last picture, JJ. The colonel here, my colonel, this gentleman I could tell the smile, dear friend, was the head of the Iraqi Public Affairs Department at the Joint Headquarters. He actually even came to America after I got out of the Army to visit. And I actually took him around D.C. We visited the grave we actually have Iraqi fallen buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Shortly after that, he was killed. He was assassinated as he stepped out of his house to go to work by a killer on a motorcycle. My point in telling you these stories, obviously these aren't Brian Thompson, but my point is I have actually been stationed and lived for almost 3 years in a country where vigilante justice and assassinations were a regular part of society life. And it undermined everything. And so my concern, and the reason I said things online, and a lot of blowback for it, was simple. I don't want Americans to live in a country where vigilante justice and assassinations become a norm or a accepted form of justice. The same people who are angry when our Republican opposition, if you will, said all the nasty things and made jokes about Paul Pelosi being attacked in his home, all the jokes and to include Trump himself making jokes about Paul Pelosi. Now we're also making jokes about Brian Thompson being murdered or, saying he deserved it. And I get it. I get the frustration of the system. There's no way to have sympathy with the victims. Okay, I don't have sympathy with Montel as a person. He did what he did. But my point when I criticize this is not to tone police you or tell you how to think. I'm just telling you, as a man who served in the army and lived in a country where the constant threat of assassination or kidnapping was the norm under Saddam, and then again afterwards during the civil war that ripped the country apart for many years, I've seen what this will do to a society and a country. And while we have a problem with violence and gun violence in America, I dread the idea and the day where violence against our fellow Americans becomes a norm. Okay, I just do, and you should too. And it's a scary time. Many of us have been doxxed. I've been doxxed 3 times. 3 times I've been doxxed that I know of. In the last year alone, having my personal information published on the dark web, it's scary that people may know where you live. Okay, and so there becomes a time where these things might happen, and this was a test. So when you see me criticizing, I'm not telling you that you should sympathize with him, or I'm not telling you should not be angry at the health insurance industry for all the things. It desperately needs reform, and it needs reform now. It needs reform yesterday, especially when we have administration talking about getting rid of the ACA. Things will just get more monstrous. But what I am saying is we should never, ever accept the idea that having someone shot in the back in the streets is a form of justice that we should accept here in the United States of America, a civilized society. Because all I can think of is the many times I sat with Dr. Muhammad in his little mud hut, originally this small little meeting, sitting on these cushions around the side while we ate whatever they brought, usually sheep, thinking about how blessed I was to live in a country like America where these kind of things weren't happening, where extrajudicial killings weren't the norm, where bombs going off weren't the norm, where black vans pulling up to your house in the middle of the night and kidnapping an entire family was the norm, and how blessed we are not to live like that in America. So I just when you see me saying I'm not comfortable with this, it comes from a place of having sat with that gentleman, and that gentleman ended up being executed just 6 years later in the very room we were sitting in. That's where that comes from. So I hope we as a society can understand that we don't want to go that path. So with that, my last thoughts for the week. Thanks for joining us. We were running a little bit late today for technological reasons, but luckily JJ, the master producer, pulled it out. You found our show, and of course, we really appreciate it right here on the On Democracy channel. I would love if you could take time to hit that subscribe button when you have a chance. We're trying to grow our audience. More of you. We've got a couple of thousand with us live. We appreciate that. Share this after we're done, so people can see the show. I hope you'll join us next week. We've got a great lineup next week's show. I got a panel. Chris Titus, the comedian, is going to join us, and his beautiful wife Rachel. We're gonna have a great panel. I got a feeling it's gonna be funnier than hell. We've got Mikey Sherrill, who's running for New Jersey governor, joining us. It's just a remarkable week, and we got another great. I tell you, we have got some great folks who are friends of the show and are going to join us. So I hope you'll tell your friends, and you'll make a place in your calendar, 11 Eastern. Every week here with us. In the meantime, always follow our Substack community, fpwellman.substack.com. We have some really cool stuff coming and more coming, and you can find out more of that. Follow us online. I am FP Wellman everywhere, FP Wellman on Blue Sky especially. It's a great place to find us. In the meantime, you heard the moats and the messages today. My messages are simple. Find your community. Find your place. I know everybody's a little bit struggling right now. It's the holidays. There's no better time than the holidays to find community. Take a moment, reset. We've got a fight ahead of us in the next year. It's no problem if you want to take a break, but we'd love for you to join us when you're ready, because we'll be here no matter what. Keep the fight for our democracy. The show is On Democracy for a reason. With that, as always, I'm Fred Wellman. Thanks for joining us here on Democracy Sunday. We'll see you next week.